Hi, my name is Kristen Winicke, and I am a customer support engineer at OSIsoft. In this video, we will be planning a PI Server upgrade to version 2015. Let's start on our current data archive machine, which is called PI SVR. To see what version of the data archive we are currently running, we're going to go into PI SMT, Operation, PI version, and we have our version, which is 3.4.380.70, 64-bit. Now let's go check out the live library documentation on PI Server 2015 upgrade. We'll go to PI Server 2015 installation, PI Server installation and upgrade, and plan a PI system upgrade. Here we'll find our version, which is listed here. Note that if we are upgrading from 32-bit, we cannot do a direct upgrade, but we are running 64-bit, so we can perform a direct upgrade. If we scroll down, we can see our basic strategy will be a direct upgrade. But note that an upgrade can be a good time to move to new hardware. If this is the case, please check out the documentation on moving a PI data archive. Also note that since we are upgrading from a version prior to 2010, 3.4.385, we will need to install Microsoft SQL Server and an AF server before proceeding with the data archive upgrade. Let's see how all of these fit into place in the PI server. The PI server is composed of two major components, the PI data archive and the AF server. PI data archive stores data into PI points, and the AF server takes those points and organizes them into assets. The AF server itself is composed of two parts, the SQL database backend and the AF server service. For our upgrade, our order will be first install the SQL server, then the AF server, and finally upgrade the PI data archive. So let's go back to our documentation. So if we go down to PI system deployment, PI system and SQL Server configuration options, we can see we have some options depending on what our system size is. On my system, I have a small PI system, which means I have 25,000 PI points or fewer and 10,000 assets or fewer. If we scroll down, we can see that we will be installing the SQL Server, the AF server, and the PI data archive all on the same machine. Also, we will be installing SQL Server Express on this node. Note that there are limitations of SQL Server Express on memory and storage, which is why it is used for small PI systems. If you have a larger system, please see the other links below, Small PI System, for more information. Next, we will want to look at the operating system requirements. Our machine is Windows Server 2008 R2 SP1. So if we go to the PI data archive operating system requirements, we can see that our version is supported. Next, let's look at the AF server OS requirements. This will be an asset framework installation and upgrade, PI AF server pre-installation tasks, system requirements. And it is referring to the PI AF 2015 release notes for details on the requirements. You can find that on the tech support website, and I have downloaded a local copy of this. So if we go to operating systems, we can see that Windows Server 2008 R2 SP1 is listed as supported operating system. It also lists the SQL Server requirements for the PI AF Server 2015. We will be installing SQL Server 2012 64-bit. The last item to consider are what ports are available. Since this is an existing data archive, we should have the ports required for the data archive opened. However, the AF server requires additional ports to be opened. To find out more information, we can go to Plan a New Pi System Deployment. Under Step 7, there is a link to a KB article. You can open those ports yourself or take this document to your IT personnel. Now we are ready to start our upgrade, so let's go to the tech support site to get the kits, the install kits. We will go to Pi Server under Products and go to Pi Asset Framework, Downloads, and sign in. If we look under Install Kits, there are two that we need for this upgrade. The first is SQL Server Express 2012 with tools, 64-bit. Next is Pi Asset Framework Server 2015 Install Kit. Finally, we will also want to download a white paper covering the SQL Server Express install, located here, Installing SQL Server 2012 Express for Pi Server. We will also need to download the Data Archive install kit. So we'll go back to Products, select Pi Data Archive, Downloads, and download the Pi Data Archive 2015 install kit. Before we begin our installation, it is important to note that SQL Server 2012 Express also installs .NET Framework 4.5, which will require a machine reboot. So to prevent data loss, we will need to do a general health check on our data archive and make sure that buffering is configured correctly on all of our Pi interface nodes. So let's go back to Pi SMT and go to Operation, Snapshot, and Archive Statistics, and press play. So there are a couple things we will want to check here. First, we need to make sure that the archived events and the snapshot events sent to queue are similar and both increasing, looking at the change column. Next, we want to make sure that the snapshot events in queue is a low number and the number of overflow queues is 0. We will also want to check our current values for our Pi points. So we'll go to Data, Current Values, and search for some of our tags. Press play and make sure that these values are updating. Next, we will need to go to our interface node. Here we have our interface node, and we will want to go to Pi Interface Configuration Utility, Tools, Buffering. Because I am running Buffering Subsystem 4.3, we can use the Buffering Manager to check the health. We'll double-click our Pi SVR data archive, and we can see that the total events sent is increasing, and our buffer capacity is good. If you do not have version 4.3, we can use the command prompt to check the health. So we'll open up the command prompt and navigate to the Pi Home bin directory and run pi buff ss-qs. Select our Pi SVR data archive, and as this runs, we can see that our total event writes and reads are equal and increasing. I only have one Pi interface node, so if you have multiple interface nodes, please repeat this check on all of those Pi interface nodes. Finally, let's go back to our data archive, and we will need to back up the data archive before proceeding. So let's go to in Pi SMT Operation Backups, select our Pi server, and select Backup Now. Because we have the scheduled daily task to back up the PI server, I will only back up our primary archive because it is the only archive that has not been backed up. I'll select a backup location, which will be our backups drive, and I'll make a new folder. And select backup. Now that our backup has completed successfully, we are ready to begin our upgrade by installing SQL Server 2012 Express. Another Field Service Engineer, Nick, will walk you through these steps in the Installing SQL Server Express for Pi AF video. If you have an existing installation of SQL Server that is already available on your network that you will use to host the Pi AF database, you can skip ahead to the Upgrade Pi Server 2015 full walkthrough video, which is where we'll start back after we complete the SQL installation.